What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Bucky back with you as we march towards the first full week of college football. We are 2 weeks out from NFL football really cranking up. Well, I guess I should say a week from tomorrow we get NFL football. How you doing, Buck?
Man, I'm great. DJ, this is one of the best weeks that we'll get because college football is kicking off in earnest. And even though there were some college football games last weekend, this is the official start, the Labor Day weekend where you get these games on. I mean, look, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like you get a ton of them, and it's a good slate of games. So I'm excited to see some of the players. I'm excited to see some of the new coaches, particularly Deion Sanders, having his opportunity to take over Colorado, and some of the teams, just seeing who's who and what's what. Even though it's early, man, you love to get a chance to see it. And I know you love all levels of football, but there is something about college football that is just different, just the pageantry, just the energy, the different systems and schemes that you see play. To me, it's just fun ball, so I'm excited.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about some games we're looking forward to the latter portion of this episode. We got a lot of NFL stuff to get to, though. We are going to hit on Bucky, what you wrote about the top 5 defensive tackles that created a little buzz. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. We've got the Jonathan Taylor situation, as well as some fascinating cuts that took place. But I want to get your thoughts on this thing at the top because I was going through and kind of sorting the video, being able to sort by statistics in the preseason. Want to look at some of the top performers at different positions and, look at the leaders. And then I was watching their tape, and not every time, obviously guys that were draft picks, were usually safe, but there were a lot of late round picks or undrafted free agents that statistically played pretty well. And then you watch the tape and it wasn't bad. They popped, they made some plays. And then I would go look at the depth charts, Buck, and lo and behold, they didn't make the active. They didn't make the 53. They make the roster. So now some of those, I'm sure most of them make their way towards practice squads. But it got me thinking, can you ever remember in time where performance in the preseason meant less than what it does now?
No, I really can't think of that. And I'm saying that without being dismissive of the guys that played really well in the preseason, because
some guys did make their way into teams, but I'm saying like there's a lot of them that didn't.
Yeah, there's something to being able to perform with the lights are on, and I don't want people to take when they see Hard Knocks or they hear coaches talk about like, hey man, you got to earn your opportunity, you have to do that those things don't work. But what you're having is more of a depth chart that is already pretty concrete when you enter training camp. There are only a handful of spots. And we've always said this. Everyone thinks the 53-man roster, everyone's competing. No, there are about 8 to 10 jobs that are really available. And so you got to hope that you're in a position that has some availability where you can earn your way onto it. But really what the preseason is about setting the people that you want on your practice squad so you can continue to develop those guys. Because the practice squad is not as relevant right now at the beginning of the season. But by the time you hit week 8 or later, those guys on the practice squad are the ones that are playing in games. And so what you're hoping in the preseason is that your guy flashes enough to earn the right to be on the practice squad so he can continue to develop to be ready to play down the stretch. Because a lot of times we're seeing, DJ, these practice squad guys are elevated to the active roster, and they're playing in these meaningful games the last few weeks of the season.
So I'm writing this down to make sure I get this right because I want to make sure that I say this properly. But if you're looking at the practice squad, okay, because now you can keep vets on the practice squad. That rule changed a few years ago. So it's changed, Buck. It used to be there was value in a young, high floor, low ceiling player. So in other words, we're going to put him on our practice squad. Maybe he doesn't have as much growth potential, as a player, but he's solid. And if we needed to get through a game, if we got a guy get hurt, we would trust this player to put him on our roster versus a young player with a high ceiling, low floor. Like, okay, this guy's not going to be ready to play a game anytime soon. So there was a debate that used to take place. Well, what's changed now is you can get the older player who's a high floor, low ceiling guy who's established, what you have. Those guys are taking up a few spots on the practice squad. Then if you're going to keep a young guy in the practice squad, you don't care. You don't want low ceiling, high floor guys. You want high ceiling, low floor guys. We'll take a shot. We got time to develop him. But if that comes down to those two guys, okay, a young guy who's a little further ahead but doesn't have as far up to go, or a young guy who's behind but he could pass him, Like, that's the decision. It is what it is. I feel bad for those other guys, but the young guy with a low ceiling, high floor, you don't really have a place anymore.
You don't have a place anymore. And so how many guys are we carrying on the practice squad now? It's like 15, 16.
16. Yeah.
Okay, so let's think of it this way, DJ. Let's say we earmark 6 of those for veteran players. So let's take every position group. Give me one veteran that I can finish a game with. So 1 DB, 1 linebacker, 1 D lineman, 1 offensive lineman, 1 wide receiver skill group guy, and then a running back. Those veterans, those are my ready to rock players. Then I take the 10, those 10 guys are my developmental squad that I'm really developing them. I'm really working on them. They're spending extra time with the strength coaches. We got a special program for them that they're working to get better, maybe this year, but really next year. Because my veterans are the guys going to be the first ones that I lean to
100%.
or whatever. And now, because of the way they made it, DJ, like I would say this, I'll sign up for that practice squad spot as a veteran. Because I think that practice squad money is now like it's crazy for what it is. So now you can keep a veteran around and do it. And so, yeah, so now these guys are really, they're not auditioning for making the team. You're auditioning to really make the practice squad because that's where development is taking place.
Yeah, and you can also go out and get guys who've been in your system, you're familiar with, and they're just nice insurance policies to stash. But I think you're probably right. I think you're probably 4 to 6 spots for veterans, and the rest you want to just pile up as many high upside developmental guys and hope that you hit on 1 or 2 of them, down the line.
So we talk about like maybe what the not Cincinnati, but the Indianapolis Colts have done with the prototypes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a collection of prototypes on the practice squad. They look the part, height, weight, speed, athleticism. We're gonna develop those guys. We're gonna teach those guys how to play football. And then I got my veterans who are my insurance policies for any injury that we may have that occurs in the early part of the season.
No doubt. And the other thing I would say is in talking to teams, it this time of year should frame the draft for people. There's a connection between the cut down days, what teams are hunting and searching for. That should carry over to the draft. And I'll get to the point here. Buck, the 3 rooms where you cannot have enough: offensive line, defensive line, corners. You can't have enough of them. Every team in the league is trying to find more and get more. You can't have enough depth. So you get into the draft, hey, it's the 3rd round. This tackle we got 2 tackles. This guy might not start. Take him. There's going to be injuries. You can't have enough. And guess what? Once you get to this time of the year, you're not finding one. You're not getting one. If you need a receiver right now, there's guys you can get that can play. You need a running back, you can find one. Tight ends, they're around. Linebackers, sure. Good luck trying to find a tackle, a pass rusher, a corner at this point in time.
Anybody that flashes, they're not hitting the streets.
No.
Anybody that flashes, anyone who has prototypical dimensions, anyone who shows a skill set that is able to be developed, they're going to have an opportunity to be around. It's just one of those things, man, you should always be in the business of those things. You talk about the trenches and cover guys. You can never have enough of them. You got to have them. And when you get them, you got to find a way to keep them and stash them and retain them. And sometimes I bet you now because the way they're doing those deals on the practice squad, they're overpaying for guys to stay on the practice squad because they want them around in the system. Like some of these guys at practice squad are making as much as the guys that make the team. It's just they got to keep you on the practice squad, hoping you get through waivers. I think Bailey Zappi is now on practice squad in New England.
Yeah, how about that?
Crazy.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that was that'll lead me to the next topic here, by the way, quickly. Colt McCoy gets released with the Arizona Cardinals. It looked like he would be the starter. He's experienced. Kyler Murray's not ready to go. They make the trade for Josh Dobbs. They've got Clayton Tune. They've got a rookie, fifth. I think he was a 5th round pick. But, and I'm not making any kind of accusations here, but I would just say if you're the Arizona Cardinals or a team maybe in that kind of timeline, right, in that window that they're in right now, you don't get any medals for trying to win 5 games, 6 games. No, you don't get it. You don't get any pats on the back or attaboys. You gotta commit to a direction, and that direction is north or south, Buck. It ain't east or west.
Either we're gonna be great or we're gonna be absolutely terrible. There's no place in between because you want to have an opportunity to either hoist a trophy or you want to accumulate players that will give you a chance to hoist the trophy. And the only way you can get those players, typically in the top 5, top 10. And so if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you're looking at your thing, and I've said this because it's not all just, hey, man, we're just going to bottom it out. You want to get the right people on the thing. So that this year, Monty Austin Ford and Jonathan Gannon, if you're going to take a year to make sure I get the right type of people, this is the year to do it because you're trying to establish.
You can turn the roster over as much as you can. Bring your own guys in.
Turn it all the way over. I want to make sure I have the right kind of guys, like-minded guys that understand what we're trying to accomplish. They fit exactly what it is. And then next year is when we start building it up. We establish the framework and the parameters for how we work, how we go about it. Next year is when we start putting the personnel in place to allow us to jump. So, yeah, I mean, you let Colt McCoy go. Kyler Murray's on the shelf. Don't look great. You got to figure out. But we know they're going to tee it up. And we're going to see what it looks like, but it doesn't look great.
I mean, you look at that division. I don't think the Rams are going to be very good. Seattle and San Francisco, I guess, just kind of slug it out to see what happens there. But, man, it is down times for a division that just a few years ago we were looking at it. I mean, it was a murderer's row. There were no layups in that division. A little bit of a layup line out there in the NFC West right now.
So let's think about this. I don't know if you saw the thing. Did you see the thing about Matthew Stafford? Like what his wife put out?
I heard. I didn't read the whole article. I heard the gist of it. He was having a hard time relating to the younger guys.
Okay, so what is as an executive?
Yeah.
What is your take on that? Because to me, I find that on him to find a way to connect. You're the leader of the team. Like we can complain about what it is. This is what the roster is going to be. Matthew, you're the franchise quarterback. That's it. DJ, I would used to think that, you can get away with that based on like, well, he's older. Aaron Rodgers couldn't connect with his teammates in Green Bay. But I've sat here and watched every Tuesday night how Aaron Rodgers has connected with this young Jets team. So no, you have to be intentional about your efforts to get to know the players that you're going to be playing with. What's your take on that?
Well, I think you're right. I think it does fall on his shoulders. I also was thinking when I saw this back to a conversation we had a few weeks ago about what an advantage it is for the handful of teams that still go away to training camp. And this for this very reason, because they're hanging out in each other's rooms. They're playing video games. They're playing cards. Like there is kind of that old school thing that would be more in his wheelhouse. Yeah, it was in his. That would be more in Stafford's wheelhouse at that age. Just as it is with the veteran Steeler players to be able to get to know their young guys. I think Cam Hayward even talked about that, about how that, they have their group of guys and TJ Watt and they get all these young guys in, they play video games, they play chess. A couple of them get together and do that. But I do think that's another advantage. The Chiefs are another team that goes off and does that. There was an article about them talking about Andy Reid's training camp and how they feel like they form some bonds there. So that was my first thought. The second thought was, you're absolutely right in that, you can't expect them to come where you are. You got to go meet them where they are. So that's where you've got to be intentional about it. And you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Hey, just coming up, putting an arm around Mekhi Becton. Let's get lunch this week. Like, there you go. You're gonna have to do it one at a time. You're probably gonna have a tough time gathering all these guys to, come over your house and hang out all the time. But you can do it one at a time, one-on-one. And that's something that's an adjustment he's gonna have to make.
He's gonna have to make. They're looking to him. They idolize him. They play video games with Matthew Stafford as the starting quarterback. So if anything, you can be a little intimidated by, hey, let me go up and talk to quote unquote Mr. Stafford, because that's how they address him. We've seen the I guess like the hero worship that the Jets players have had for Aaron Rodgers. Well, the same is going to go for Matthew Stafford. They've seen this guy play at a high level. And so he has to kind of break the ice for them, and he has to welcome them into his world because, man, that's a scary thing. I remember stepping to the locker room with Jim Kelly and Andre Reed and Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith. DJ, these are the guys that you look up to. Like they're stars. And so we're on the same level. I come in as a rookie and we're on the same, like, no. So you're right. He has to meet them at their level and let them know, hey, it's okay, guys. Let's come hang out. Let's go play a little ping pong. Let's shoot pool in the locker room. Let's do some other stuff. He has to be intentional. They're just not going to come to him because not only the age difference, but there's a respect level that they want to maintain with him because they know that he's great and they don't want to kind of impede upon his space when it comes to that.
You know who we should call, because we read all about it and we heard about it over the last several years, was Tom Brady. Tom Brady, you talk to any of his teammates, they said he would come up to every young guy in the room and come up and introduce himself. Hey, Tom Brady. Like, really? Yeah, you didn't need to give me that. But he made those connections with those guys, and you do it one-on-one. That's how you do it.
Yeah, you gotta pick and choose intentionally. Hey, I'm gonna talk to 3 new guys on the team today. What's going on, this and that. It can be casual, but you want to do it. If you're Matthew Stafford, you need to know their names. It's part of it. It's not the same, but it is in a way. I coach high school, so we coach in high school. You have a brand new JV team, a bunch of new freshmen, a bunch of middle schoolers come in. Well, the one thing that you can do as the coach, you got to learn their names. You got to learn their names, DJ, and you got to challenge yourself to learn their names the first 2 weeks that they're there, because if you never connect with them, how can you really coach them? And so if you're Matthew Stafford, how can you lead a bunch of guys that you don't know? That's what he has to do. Sean McVay can help him, but that has to be the quarterback intentionally trying to reach out and make those connections.
No doubt. All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. There's one more piece of news we need to talk about, and Jonathan Taylor not getting traded. So I guess it's the thing that didn't happen. And then we'll talk about some DTs and what we're looking forward to this weekend. We'll be back right after this. All right, Buck. Jonathan Taylor, I don't know that either of us are surprised, I guess. Still an Indianapolis Colt. Thoughts?
Thoughts are, Jonathan Taylor can go kicking and screaming and do all the other stuff. He can have a terrible 2 tantrum all he wants. He's playing for the Colts. He's going to play for the Colts on that $4 million number. And then at the end of that, he might play on a franchise tag. Jonathan Taylor doesn't have any leverage in this situation. It is, what do they say? It is the life that he chose. He's a running back in the National Football League. We have talked about it. People are on record. The only thing that they can do now when it comes to a negotiation is take where he's at now, add 2 franchise tags. That's the negotiation. Yeah. I can give you a little sugar on top of that. But the days of the Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley deal, long gone.
Yeah, McCaffrey.
So, McCaffrey, and even that is like different with Jonathan Taylor. Man, Jonathan Taylor has so much mileage on him from his time at Wisconsin to how he's been utilized with the Colts. Who is going to overpay for that? I just can't imagine. I think the thing that surprised me out of this, the Green Bay Packers having an interest.
Do you buy that?
He played at Wisconsin. Maybe
what does interest mean?
I don't know. Maybe they call, hey, Ballard, how much you want for him? Nah, we're good. Whatever that is.
I'm not speaking facts here. I'm just saying from the outside, when I see that interest, let me ask you a question. If I have a player, on my roster, you're an agent, right? Mm-hmm. You represent a player on my roster that I've got to cut. So I call you and I say, hey, Buck, this Jones, this defensive tackle, we like him, but we're going to have to let him go. He's not going to be able to make the team. And then you turn around to me and say, oh man, I understand. I get it. Hey, I represent Jonathan Taylor. Would you guys ever have any interest in Jonathan Taylor? Yeah, sure. I'd have some interest in Jonathan Taylor. Shoot, I don't know what it's going to cost. We'd be, if it'd have to be the right price, but yeah.
We'd talk.
No, it's not. So my question to you is, does that constitute that the Green Bay Packers had interest? Oh. And I'm not talking about this specific. I'm just saying anytime I see somebody had interest, I'm like, there's a big scale of difference between me calling the Indianapolis Colts and saying, I'll give you next year's one, and me telling the agent, I'll make Jonathan Taylor, $15 million a year back. Now that's interest. Me saying, yeah, we'll see. We'll listen, I guess. Let's see what's the price.
How much you want for him?
That's the scale. So I don't ever buy. Anytime you see a team had interest, I don't really put much into it.
So my thing with him and the entire situation is, what's the end game? Or what is the end game? He has to play if he's going to play. Like, he can be on pup for a little bit, but the salary is the salary. He's committed for $4 million this year. He doesn't have any rights beyond this year because they always hold the franchise tag for another year. And DJ, if they dribble out the shot clock, by the time he hits free agency, he'll be 26 years old. No one's going to pay big money for a 26-year-old running back. He has to understand it. And sometimes, I know you're not a gambler, but DJ, sometimes when you play blackjack, the house wins. So you just gotta, hey man, I'm sitting on 16.
Yeah.
Should I hit or should I not? Hey, I'm gonna hold it. 18, dealer wins. Like that's what it is. So he just has to know in the negotiation, what can I get? And his best bet is the ball out, and then the hope that he can get something beyond the franchise tag. But he doesn't have many options.
My take on the running back thing is much like you said with the let's just start with the franchise tag numbers and then we'll sprinkle on top. And that could be even incentive based. If you want to protect the club wants to protect itself. Hey, if you hit these markers, we'll give you a little extra sugar on top of that. But we'll start with the base of these franchise tags. We'll guarantee you those numbers right now. And then you hit some numbers, we'll sprinkle some more on top. That just seems like the way that this thing gets done.
That's the way that it's going to continue to get done. We saw and heard stuff about the Saquon Barkley stuff. He just turns it down because I think they put $4 million on top of whatever the total value of the franchise tag would have been. No, okay, He comes back. Then he has to have this mega performance on the field to get above the number. Josh Jacobs gets a little bit above the franchise tag with some things in that, but
that's the formula.
It's been established now. You've seen our last two running backs to get signed. That's what they have to do. He has to know that's what he's in for. That's what's in store for him.
Yeah. No, and you said 26. Shoot, he came in pretty young, so I'd take 26 over, 28, 29. It becomes harder. 26, he's still got. There's somebody that'll give him a good 2-3 year deal at 26. Yeah, he got a chance to get there, but you have to stay healthy from here to then.
Stay healthy and play, and he plays a position and he has to stay healthy and perform well with a rookie quarterback and an offensive line that needs to improve despite the pedigree that sits on that front line.
No doubt. So anyways, interesting situation there with Jonathan Taylor. So to summarize that, the Green Bay interest, I don't know what to say about that. I'm not going to go into that. I don't really see much to it. Buck, you've got an article up, top 5 defensive tackles. We work 5-1, Daron Payne, DeForest Buckner, Quinnen Williams. I think everybody's good with those. Then it gets interesting. Number 2, Aaron Donald. Number 1, Chris Jones. So Chris Jones holding out right now. I'm sure he loved to see this. I'm sure his agent loved to see this as well. More evidence that he should be compensated along the lines of what Aaron Donald is compensated, which is quite nice. I'm sure he enjoyed that.
I don't like your voice. I feel like you don't agree with me on this one. I feel like you still want to give.
I see Chris Jones twice a year. I know how dominant he is. A dominant player, and he's done it in the postseasons as well. So I take nothing away from Chris Jones. Aaron Donald's healthy and on the field. He's a one of one.
He is a one of one, and he's the $30 million guy at defensive tackle. Shoot, I think he's the highest paid pass rusher in the National Football League.
Highest paid defensive player. I think that's the number that Bosa's chasing as well.
Yeah, and he's a dominant player, but I think he's 31. The pressures and stuff are fine and solid. I just don't know if he's going to continue to be able to sustain it. And then when I look at Chris Jones coming off a monster year, 15.5 sacks, he does it in just a disruptive and explosive fashion. Look, man, at some point we got to take the crown. Sometimes you got to say, and new. I mean, sometimes it goes like that. There's a new undisputed champ, and you have to give it to him. What I love about like having to look at the defensive tackles, though, DJ, is one of the things, we talked about, in a way, we talked about the P's, and we've talked about the 3 P's and the 4 P's in some different way, but we talked about in building teams. And the team building equation is passers, it's pass rushers, it's playmakers, and then it's pass protectors. Those are the guys that get paid. So it used to always be, we know quarterback, and quarterback money is now in the 40 million range. So now those other P's, they're making quarterback money in the $20 million range. Yeah. So when you think about pass rushes, it always used to be the guys on the edges. Well, DJ, they are now, I think, 8 defensive tackles making $20 million annually. Chris Jones is at the bottom of that. But Dexter Lawrence, Daron Payne, Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, the list goes on and on with these guys making significant money. And the defensive tackle position has evolved from being one where we used to have these run stuffing nose tackles and 3 techniques to Oh yeah, you might be a run stopper, but you better be able to get to the quarterback.
Well,
If
hold
you're gonna
on,
have a
hold
chance
on,
to get
hold
there.
on. Then I want you to do this. We always talk about blink scouting. I'm gonna ask you to make a blink decision. Okay. I don't want you to
Mhm,
give any thought to it. I just need you to say one or the other. You ready? Chris Jones,
mhm.
Nick Bosa.
Whew, Nick Bosa.
That you would you go Nick Bosa?
I would go Nick Bosa.
I think I would go Chris Jones.
Really.
Nick Bosa, I love Nick Bosa, but I would say it's harder.
To get home from the
It's hard.
edge.
It's harder. You can try and take him away to some degree. Chris Jones, Buck, I see it. I mean, not you can't do anything.
Oh,
And he's wrecking
he's
top
he,
inside. You can put him out. He one of the better ends. If you want to play him at any, be one of the top 5 or 6 end.
so my thing would be in the team building thing, I want one of each. So now we talk about let's just talk about how you allocate your cash in the salary cap era in a passing thing. Because you're gonna see this, because this is gonna happen real time for you with the LA Chargers.
Yeah.
We've now paid the quarterback. So when we pay the quarterback, all the money goes to that side of the ball. Because I now have a high-end quarterback, I need to have at least 2 marquee receivers, whether it's a tight end and a wide receiver, 2 wide receivers, got to have that. I got to pay to protect them. So tackle, guard, whatever, we got to have somebody to go there. So on defense, I'm left to pay 3 people. I'm only paying 3 people on defense. I'm paying 2 pass rushers and 1 second level defender, wherever you deem that to be.
Yeah.
But it used to be, hey, I want to have the edges. So Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. But now the better approach might be one outside, one inside. Sometimes I put them on the same side together. Sometimes I put them on opposite sides, but I want someone to threaten me up the gut, someone to threaten me off the edge. That is the formula to me to building that championship team in this new salary cap era.
Yeah, you talked about all those defensive tackles, and I'm looking down at your list. To me, trying to game plan, let's just look at the top 3. Quinnen Williams, Aaron Donald, Chris Jones. There's no answers. Those guys are a nightmare to deal with. And you don't, where they're going to line up inside, where you're going to how you're going to try and get to them and slide to them. It just makes everything else easier for everybody else. They disrupt you run and pass. They're always playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. I mean, at the end of the day, if you got a dominant end right, I can always run left. I can't get away from Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones and Aaron Donald. I can't get away from them. No matter what you do, you cannot get away from them.
No, you can't. You can't scheme your way out of it. You can't do it. You can't quick set them.
They're harder to find. I mean, if you did a list of the top 5 edge rushers, you'd have 15 names you're trying to sort through to get to those top 5.
So not only that, so this comes on the heels of last year. I think there were 3 defensive tackles taken in the first round. Yeah. DJ, it is now becoming the position of the guys. Yeah, I told you, it's like 8 making over 20 pass rushers. I mean, like that's what it is. You have to be able to do that. Even this, let's say it, you go down the line. Dexter Lawrence got paid in the offseason.
Yep.
He got paid in the offseason because he gets with Wink, and Wink is like, oh my God, this is a dominant, disruptive inside pass rusher. Deron Payne emerges. He's been pegged as a nose tackle / run stopper. Last season, he has 11.5 sacks. Now all of a sudden you have to pay him. You have him and Jonathan Allen on the same defense. Jeffrey Simmons, we know how good Jeffrey Simmons was when he came out of Mississippi State. We've seen how good he's been for Tennessee. Javon Hargrave on the inside. DJ, there are a ton of these dudes that are inside that are wrecking shop. It's almost a requirement. You better have someone on the interior that can dominate it, not just against the run. They got to be a dominant inside pass rusher because it changes the way that opponents have to play.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion there. Inside versus outside. Ideally, like you said, you'd like to have one of each. But I love the list. You can check that out, by the way. Go to NFL.com/Bucky Brooks. You can find all Buck stuff on there. College football kicks off this weekend, Buck. We've got the list of games here. I'm not going to patronize you, but I'll be honest. I think that your game's the game I'm looking forward to the most. North Carolina, South Carolina. That's going to be a great matchup.
It'd be a great matchup. And I'll say this as a Tar Heel. It's always been difficult for Carolina taking on South Carolina because what you have is the SEC versus ACC thing. The last time these teams matched up, South Carolina absolutely put it on them with their physicality and toughness. But the reason why it's a compelling matchup, we're talking 2 quarterbacks. One we knew we were talking about in Drake May. Another has reemerged kind of jumped back onto the radar, and Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was a prized recruit from Arizona, goes to Oklahoma, gets beat up by Caleb Williams, disappears and goes to South Carolina. People kind of like forget about Spencer Rattler. End of the year last year, South Carolina put us some flashes. South Carolina knocks off Tennessee. You got a chance to see Spencer Rattler.
Some of the flashes that you got excited about when he was
younger.
Some of the
flashes. So now this is a big opportunity for him because whether Drake May is QB1, QB2, coming into the season, he's one of the top quarterbacks. So in a game where you have an opportunity to see one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, Spencer Rattler has an opportunity to kind of put some respect on his name again if he outplays Drake May. This is a huge game for Drake May, but it's a big game for Spencer Rattler because if he wants to kind of get back in that conversation as a first-round talent, he has to perform on this with all eyes on him.
All right, answer me this on the other side of it, because I talked to a buddy who has been rolling through the Southeast on a scouting tour, and he's seen just about everybody. And I said, "What? Give me the standouts. Like, what stood out to you when you're out here looking at these schools?" He goes, "I'll be honest with you." He said, "On the hoof, what they look like." He said, "I would put what North Carolina looks like right now up against Georgia." He's like, "I'm not saying it as players." But he's saying that he said they got 8 defensive linemen, they got 2 running backs. That receiver, I hope it gets eligible, but they're kind of NCAA's kind of screwing him right now. But he said that team looks the part, man, from where it was a handful of years ago to now. He said, "Mac, you can tell he's brought in a lot of NFL bodies in there with Carolina." I thought, "Oh, really?" It's like we said Georgia. I was like, "Georgia?" He's like, "I'm telling you, DJ, they look the part now down at Carolina."
So it'd be interesting to see what it look like. I do know one thing, having known Coach Brown for a long time, had a sour taste in his mouth. The team won 9 games. The team won the Coastal. Team went to the ACC championship, but it felt like a disappointing year because of the way they finished. I think they lost 3 out of their last 4 games. Didn't play well after the Georgia Tech game, and he wants to kind of right the ship. What I will say about him and the NFL talent, like in terms of the scout coming through, that has always been Coach Brown's MO. Looked the part. When Carolina was rolling, when he was there previously, a lot of NFL players, a lot of bodies, a lot of prototypes when it came to size,
Peppers,
athleticism, all those guys. And before you can compete with those teams that you talk about in the playoff, you got to at least look like those teams and then hope that you can develop the skills. And so that'll go a long way. I'm curious when we talk about this weekend because everyone will talk about SEC because the SEC still in the scouting world. It's still kind of like the standard in terms of where you go to get players, how they look, how they perform. You still want to see some of that. So I can't wait to see. I think Florida State, LSU, how they match
Florida
up.
State, LSU, that's Sunday. Yeah,
because people talking about Florida State being back, and the one thing going all the way back, that used to be 2-3 day visit. Having played against them, it was all NFL bodies and prototypes. So now you took 2 teams that have always been the prototypical NFL feeding farms, Florida State, and what Brian Kelly has done with LSU. I mean, look, this weekend's a scout's dream in terms of all of these big games being able to do it.
Yeah, also looking forward to Monday, which you'll get Clemson and Duke to see what Clemson looks like. Duke has a quarterback, Riley Leonard, that a lot of people like as well. So keep an eye on that one. But you touched on it at the top, and I want to hit you on the last one here. What should the realistic expectations be for Prime as Colorado goes to take on TCU? And I know we both got buddies on that staff, but what should the expectations from the outside be? Because I think there's great mystery about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery. For me, I try and have a realistic view. If he's able to get a winning season out of it, I would say that's a huge success in year 1. Despite
that's a wild success. What, they win 1 game last year?
1 game last year. And I know they had 70 transfers and that stuff. If they can get to a winning season, to me, that's it. Because I still believe in rebuilding a program, crawl, walk, run. Yeah. They got to crawl a little bit to the point where they're competitive. Then they got to take the next stage to go from being competitive to being good, and then from good to great. To me, that's 3-4 years before you're able to do that. Despite the name and despite the success that he had at Jackson State, I think it takes some time to do that. Here's what I want everyone to do, though. Travis Hunter is going to play both ways in this game. He's going to play wide receiver and cornerback. For those of you who don't know Travis Hunter followed Deion from Jackson State to Colorado after being a 5-star recruit that was expected to go to
The
Florida
number
State.
one player in the country, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Deion flips him from Florida State. He goes to Jackson State. What he has an opportunity to do is to be, man, I'm trying to think that the top two-way player that we've seen eventually make his way to the draft since, I mean, he's talking about like Roy Green, but even on the collegiate level, these
I mean, like Adoree Jackson is one that comes to mind from recent.
Comes to mind, yeah, Adoree Jackson.
They sprinkled him on offense.
But this dude is talking. They're talking about starting him. We saw Charles Woodson do a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Adoree Jackson, as you mentioned, there've been a handful of others that have kind of done it. But DJ, what I'm hoping this does, if he plays well, I'm hoping it opens up the floodgates to more players playing on both sides of the ball. Because in high school, that's what these kids do. In college, we don't let them do that. But if Travis Hunter is able to do this at an elite level, now the college game becomes more like the high school game where I'm putting my best players on the field. Mm-hmm. And I'd be darned what it looks like. I'm excited to see Travis Hunter play.
By the way, I won't mention the names, but I watched one of the top high school programs on TV the other day. And they're on the broadcast, they're announcing they're all Power 5 kids. They're all going Power 5, this, that, and the other. And kind of opposite of what you were saying there, at these ultra big powerhouse high school programs, those kids aren't going both ways. So now, Buck, a lot of them, not only have we gotten away from multi-sport guys, so they're not playing multiple sports. And now at some of these huge programs, they're not even going both ways. Like, to me, man, they're missing something there. Like I wonder if you look and track some of these programs, these powerhouse programs, relative to, how highly recruited these guys are and how many stars they have, how many of them really that hit big, like really pay off huge, versus some of these other kids, maybe at a little bit lesser of a program, still good high school football, but they're playing both ways. They're running track, they're playing hoops. Like, I think that's a better overall development process than just being so loaded that he only plays receiver. That's it.
Yeah, there's something to that. Now, I would say from a coaching standpoint, what happens when you have guys playing both ways in a very competitive game, the fourth quarter, two-way players can wear out. From a coaching standpoint, I tend to believe like you can have an offensive line and a defensive line. It's hard to play both ways at the line. Your skill guys, though, they absolutely can play both ways, because what you can do, you can rest those guys on offense or defense or whatever. But you're right. I believe they are missing out on some things when you don't play both ways. You don't develop like the wide receiver who gets used to going forward, but now he has to backpedal and break and drive and do some of the other stuff. Not only does it allow him to learn different skills, but DJ, he develops a different set of athletic attributes that'll make him a better player eventually when he settles in on one position. With Travis Hunter, though, now I'm hoping that some of those 5-star guys maybe demand a little more hey, coach, I'll go here.
Yeah.
But I would like to play both sides.
Oh, I think it's great, man. I love it. I hope that does happen.
To me, that's what I want to see. We talk about, and we've talked about this on the podcast, the difference between wide receivers in the National Football League when it comes to the draft and the DBs, that for a long time we were getting the lesser athletes at DB because all the high school coaches were putting their guys at wide receiver and leaving them there. And so you had a kind of a divide between the athleticism. If we get to the point where the college guys are playing the game like high school guys, where you play defense on this series, but you're going over here, you can play some wide out.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting a better overall athlete. I just think we talk about the more you can do, the Troy Browns of the world and that stuff. Imagine doing that with, and no disrespect to Troy Brown, but imagine doing that with like 5-star athletes that you now take to the pros and you say, oh, okay, this guy's going to be my
impact the game.
Third receiver, but he'll be my nickel and my dime DB if we have to. Mm-hmm. Just get a better overall player.
I love it. That's a fun way to end this one. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. We've got a bunch of football coming your way this weekend. We'll be back next week to break it all down. Multiple episodes coming your way next week. I think 3 or 4. So we will not be there on Monday. We've got Labor Day, but we will be back with multiple episodes next week as we march towards the start of the NFL season. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.